Hi, and welcome to Gaston Spotlight. I'm Ben Baer. Today's spotlight is on George Hite, a member of our community who worked for the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority for over 28 years. Welcome, George.
Thank you,
I'm happy that you were able to come in and talk to us today.
Appreciate the opportunity.
According to your resume, it seems you've had a lot of work experience. What was it like to work for so many companies? Yeah.
It's been a great experience. I spent the biggest part of my career, over 28 years, with the CRVA, which is the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority. Basically, they're responsible for operating public assemblies facilities that the city owns. Those include the Convention Center, NASCAR Hall of Fame, Bojangles Coliseum,
Wow.
and Ovens Auditorium, and a lot of others. They also do the Visitors Bureau, so they have their hands into a lot of the tourism impact for the Charlotte market.
That's cool. They must have their hands really full.
Yeah, absolutely. There's kind of never a dull moment, but it's a very exciting field to be a part of. It changes. It literally changes every day.
Yeah, that's really cool. What are some skills that you learned or gained while you were working there?
Certainly, I think the number one thing was to learn and be good at multitasking. Just like any job or any business, things change, and you have to be able to adjust to that, make it work, and make it seamless. The biggest thing is whether it's a sporting event or a concert or a family show or a Broadway play, you want the end product to be a great one. People have spent large amounts of money to buy tickets for events, and while you may have issues backstage or things may not go right outside the venue, you want the customers who paid those large sums of money to know that nothing has gone wrong.
Right.
They've come in, they've had a great experience, the show's been great, the game's been great, they go home feeling great, feel like they got their money's worth.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna kind of say too. Is that they feel like it was worth going and that they want to come again.
Absolutely.
Out of all of these places where you've worked, most of your positions seem to relate to the Bojangles Coliseum. Why is this so?
Well, I grew up in the neighborhood. I started working at the Coliseum, which back then was called the Charlotte Coliseum, when I was 13 years old.
Wow.
Making $1.50 a night as an usher.
That's crazy.
But it was exciting. For a kid in the neighborhood, it was the place to be. I grew up in Charlotte, and strangely enough, grew up a hockey fan, so I started going to the hockey games at the Coliseum starting at around the age of 6. And so this was an opportunity for me to not only see the games, but see the concerts, and saw all kinds of great concerts, all kinds of great sporting events, bull ridings, horse shows, boat shows, all kind of things. And I got to see them for free and actually got paid to work there. Even got to see Elvis Presley,
Wow,
which
that's
was
cool.
just a super memory. One of my favorite memories of the Coliseum, and I wasn't certainly working there then, but there's a great shot of the marquee, and they've got, and still do have, it's an old school marquee like you used to see in schools and movie theaters, where you actually put the letters up on the marquee.
That's cool.
And at one point, there was the Billy Graham Crusade, Billy Graham just passed away, Elvis Presley, hockey, and championship wrestling.
Wow.
And that's another event slash sport, depending on the way you look at it, that was hugely popular in Charlotte. They would have wrestling on a monthly basis there to huge crowds. Had wrestling on Thanksgiving night and Christmas Day to sold out crowds. So it was
That's
a
dedication.
phenomenal, absolutely.
So it obviously seems that you never had a dull or tiring moment while working there, no matter throughout your whole life.
No, and one of the key things is you can plan as much as you want and try and have everything ready. But when a show rolls in, these guys are traveling overnight from another city, another venue, and they sleep a little bit on the bus on the way up. They roll in at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and we think we may have the stage right and we've got all the dressing rooms assigned, but they come in and want to tweak things just because, once you get there, you kind of really get a feel for the building and the way things are laid out. So for me and for our staff, it was very important to be able to make changes on the fly and make changes that were to the best interest of the show.
Being flexible to what the guest basically kind of envisioned everything being like.
Absolutely, because in the end, it's all about making sure that they're happy and able to put on a good show for the audience.
That's cool. How difficult was it working at the Coliseum?
I think difficult would be probably something that I think the most difficult part was probably the number of hours. Certainly the number of events that you would have in a particular week or a particular month, coupled with just your regular job duties of budgeting and booking the building and settling events and things like this. Days, your day might start as early as 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning and might end as late as 1 or 2 o'clock the next morning. Then you've got to be right back the next morning to kind of do your real work and get ready for the next event. So, but it's one of those things, and I think you saw it or you didn't see it in people, that it kind of got in your blood, and that you knew the people that were cut out for it and able to make it work, and they had a passion for it that was very evident.
Yeah. So it almost made it worth it to work so many hours just to see other people's reactions and enjoying the environments and whatnot.
Absolutely, and I would often tell my wife it sounded corny, but I always would get a good feeling at the end of the night that we pulled off an event or a game without any type of major issues, and if we had issues, we solved them and made it work, and the public knew none for the worse.
That's great. Back in 2015, the Coliseum went through some major renovation, and I know you were a big part in that. How did it feel to go through such a big change, since you've seen how the Bojangles Coliseum used to be and what it's become now?
It was a very important time for the future of the building. We had just secured getting the minor league hockey team. It's a AAA Charlotte Checkers. Their parent club is the Carolina Hurricanes right up the road in Charlotte. The building and the sister building next door, the auditorium, opened in 1956. So as you can imagine, it had been through several renovations over the years, but nothing to this scale. Yeah. So we undertook, with the city's assistance, a $17 million renovation spaced over 2 years. And we had to do this. Our typical off-season, if there is such a thing as an off-season, is the latter summer months. So we do a huge amount of graduations. We do all of the graduations for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, for the high schools.
Cool.
So we had to get through the graduations as the sole place to do that. Once graduations ended, we were able to close the building down and get started. So we did this over a 2-year period, and the major key pieces of the renovations were new scoreboard, new LED ribbon boards, new lighting. We had the old metal halide lights that basically, when you cut them off hot, it would take them anywhere from 6 to 8, 10 minutes to warm back up. A quick note about that, we would have to cut the lights on while they were singing the national anthem, so that by the time they finished the anthem, the lights were full up and they were ready to play.
Wow.
One of the more interesting decisions was the seating. The building still had the original wood seats in the building that it had since the building opened in 1956. Well, part of the issue with that was wood seats were very uncomfortable. And back in the day, people weren't probably as big or large as they are now. Nothing personal against anybody. But, it's all about comfort. So we made the decision to remove the wood seats and got a lot of feedback on that, all positive. People talking about the great memories of, they had their first date, they met their wife, or they met their husband. at an event, so it was a very interesting time. So new seats, the new scoreboard, we actually ended up building a brand new state-of-the-art dressing room for the hockey team out of a space in the building. So all the other refurbishments that came along with it, a lot of painting and a lot of lighting and things like this. In the end, after 2 years, the building is well positioned to take on another 20, 30, 40 years in Charlotte history.
Man, it must have felt really sad for all all those memories to come flooding back while that was all happening.
Absolutely. There were a lot of seats where people back in the day would carve their name in the seats. Also, for a lot of years, people could smoke in the building. So there were cigarette burns in the seats and all kind of things. So it was some good memories, but in the end, we felt like it was the right choice.
All right. Well, I'm happy that there was no regrets in that.
Right.
On a different topic, what were some of the weirdest things that happened while you worked at the Coliseum?
I remember this was years ago. We were having a rodeo, and we actually had a horse get loose downstairs. And on all four corners of the building, we have these long sets of concrete stairs with a riser in the middle. If I hadn't have seen it myself, I wouldn't have believed it. But the horse came up the steps from the lower level, poked his head into the seating area through the curtain, turned around, made a lap around the building, and this is slick concrete floors with all glass around the exterior, so just primed for any kind of major incident. He came back around, went back down the same stairs, never missed a beat, and went back downstairs to where he belonged.
That's crazy.
The other quick story also involves animals. We had a small circus at the building one night, and we were finishing up, and I was getting ready to leave, and one of our parking attendants ran up to me and said, "Did you see the horses?" I said, "Yeah, I saw them earlier. They've got them out back." Well, they had gotten away.
Oh.
And this was about 10 o'clock on a Friday night on busy Independence Boulevard. So 4 of the horses had gotten out of the enclosure they were in and taken off running up Independence Boulevard.
Wow.
So all these traffic, and I can imagine people driving by, maybe had a drink or two, and no, I didn't see a horse. So they made it about a half mile up the road, took the exit onto Eastway Drive, went up to Monroe Road, took a right, heading back toward the building, and actually a off-duty EMS attendant saw him, had some rope in his truck, and actually helped to corral him, and by that time the circus people had gotten there to him.
Wow.
By the time I got back down to the building, I see them walking over the hill, led by the circus folks, back to their enclosure. So it was a wild night, and for the fact that no one got hurt, there were no wrecks and no incidents was a miracle.
That's very fortunate, although it kind of makes you think maybe you shouldn't bring horses to the Coliseum
Well,
anymore.
yes, yeah.
I know you earlier you mentioned being able to see and kind of meet Elvis. Were there any other famous people that you got to meet while working there?
Certainly over the years, and there are times that we would get to say hello to the artists or shake their hand or welcome them to the city or to the venue. We've talked about the Coliseum a lot. We also operated Ovens Auditorium, which is a 2,600-seat theater next door. And that venue was certainly a multi-purpose venue. Could do anything from dance recitals to Broadway plays. One of the last Broadway plays I worked was 4 straight weeks of the Broadway play Wicked. Sold out shows for every performance, and showed the versatility not only of the building itself but of the staff there. The staff there were all veterans, and they were able to help those first-time promoters or second-time promoters that had never done a show out. For instance, a dance recital that might have 150 kids running around backstage and all getting ready and getting their makeup on and things like that. From an event like that where they need some additional attention to a Broadway play where it's a seasoned cast and a regular touring show. So it just showed the versatility of the building to make that work and the staff to embrace it.
Yeah, and that's really impressive, especially since the building's also supporting not only the Coliseum but this auditorium. So that's really interesting.
And you have to remember that when the building, and even though we've had some renovations, at its core and at its infrastructure, you're still dealing with a building that was built and opened in the mid-50s and trying to make it work in today's era.
Yeah, and that must be certainly difficult sometimes.
Yeah, we had a great crew, and certainly people that knew where all the switches were and how things operated and how to make it work and get a little bit more life out of a piece of equipment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I've also heard that you helped bring the Checkers back to the Coliseum. So how did that all come about? Like what brought to your attention to bring them back?
Well, they had been playing uptown at what was then Time Warner Cable Arena. It's now called the Spectrum Center. We just felt like our organization, as well as others, wanted hockey to return to this building. When the building opened in 1955, it wasn't long before hockey was there. The Baltimore Clippers, who played up in Maryland area, had their arena burned to the ground.
Oh.
And they quickly started looking for a location along the East Coast where they could move their hockey team to. And they looked at Charlotte. It had the ice-making plant ability, and so that was the way that hockey got its start back in the city. And in some shape or form, hockey had been in the market in several different leagues and several different teams for a large number of years. When what was now called the new Coliseum, which is ironically not there anymore, was torn down, opened up in 1988, the decision was made to close the Coliseum. The auditorium stayed open. The offices stayed open. 5 years later, we reopened the Coliseum in 1993, brought hockey back then. So there was a certain passion and a charm about having hockey in that building, and we felt like we could rejuvenate that again. So started having some informal talks with the management of the hockey team, and after those talks kind of progressed, we talked about renovations that could be done. They saw it as a great opportunity to continue to grow the sport, move to the east side of Charlotte and kind of make that their home base. And also one of the keys in coming to the Coliseum at that point was they would be what's called our anchor tenant. They would have the first choice of dates. They would have the primary dates. In their situation uptown, they were there with the NBA team who got the first dib at dates, as well as other major concerts, the circus and family shows and things like this. So they didn't always get the dates that they needed. And in minor league hockey, weekend dates are prime. And so we were able to offer them just about any weekend that they had available, and then booked our schedule around them. And so it was truly a win-win for us and the hockey team.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask a couple more questions, but unfortunately we've ran out of time. But if you could come in next time, I'd really appreciate it. It's been really fun hearing these stories, and it's really cool to hear these experiences from you.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
This has been Gaston Spotlight. I'm Ben Baer with my guest, George Hite, and I will see you guys next time.